Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. We are very excited for our setting yourself apart for that job opportunity. So we are really excited to be here today. Please feel free to introduce yourselves in the comment section. Let us know which university you're from. And we will start shortly. We are just waiting for more people to join, but those that are busy signing in, thank you so much for joining. We will start very soon. So I am very excited to have three amazing speakers with me today. So we have Naythan, Kayser, Cara-Jean Petersen, as well as David King here with us. So I would just like to welcome our speakers and thank you so much for joining. For the students that just signed in, please feel free to introduce yourselves in the comment section. Tell us which university you're from. You can also tell us what you're studying, because we're very excited to have you here with us. So thank you so much for joining. So we also have a short survey that we'll be posting in the comment section. Please feel free to complete that survey after the webinar or whenever it is that you need to sign off. So we are just really excited. So last week we spoke about, with David, he spoke about knowing who you are. So we will be continuing with that. So we will just a recap on last week. So last week we had David and Manindle from the Knowledge Trust. So the Knowledge Trust shared some really good tips with us. They also shared with us their nano course that is available for free on their website. So guys, please visit www.theknowledgetrust.org to access any of those free resources. And then with David last week. So David had a really good session, interactive session. We had a student with us last week that had a job interview straight after we had our webinar. So he had quite a lot of questions. So we were very excited about that. And I see that we have some faces here from last week as well. Welcome, guys. I see we have students from the University of Witwatersrand as well as University of Limpopo. Hi, Wiseman. We also have a student from TUT. Welcome and thank you so much for joining, guys. Very excited. So just a quick recap on last week. So last week we had Manindle, who shared with us the amazing resources from the Knowledge Trust. So you can access that on their website. And then we had David, who spoke about, knowing who you are. And we will be using today's session just to build on that further. So last week, David spoke about, if you don't have any work experience, you can draw from your life experiences when answering questions in an interview. And you also need to be curious about the company that you are applying for. So you need to be sure of who you are and what you can offer the company when you enter that interview. So you need to literally fill that gap and meet the need. And remember to do the Job Prep 101 course offered by the Knowledge Trust as a free resource. So today's session will be on, are you mentally and emotionally ready for a job interview? So that is really very exciting for us. And with me, I have three amazing speakers. So we will start with Cara-Jean. She's here with us today. So Cara is the Student Engagement Manager, and she is a qualified psychologist, counselor registered with the HPC SCA and has over 10 years work experience in youth and project management work. So she is also the Student Engagement Manager for Feenix. So welcome, Cara, and thank you so much for joining our session today. Students, guys, you should be very excited to hear from Cara. She has been at Feenix for over 3 years. So she'll also be sharing some of her knowledge with you guys today, seeing that we have been working with universities and with you as students. So we're very excited about having her with us today. And then we also have Naythan Kayser, So we have Naythan Kayser here from the University of the Western Cape. So Naythan is the Leadership and Social Responsibility Coordinator at UWC. So Naythan is currently employed as the coordinator within the Office of Leadership and the Social Responsibility at the University of the Western Cape, and he is also a registered counsellor. So Naythan has really been he has a lot of experience in project management, student supervision, support, and sexual research and facilitation, as well as monitoring and evaluation. So we're very excited to have Naythan with us, and he'll be sharing his amazing story of how he has developed emotional intelligence, as well as, just sharing personal growth story with everyone here today. And then lastly, we have David King with us here again today. So David is a learning and development activist with over 25 years of experience in the talent corporate space. So we're very excited to be having David back. Guys, please feel free to pop those questions in the comment section. We will be having a Q&A later after we have completed the panel discussion. So we have some amazing tips and expertise from experts that's been in the field. So get ready, get your notebooks, write some notes down, and just pop your questions in the comment section. So yeah, I will now be officially handing over to Cara-Jean Petersen, who will be facilitating the session or the panel discussion with Naythan as well as David. But thank you all so much for joining us. We are very excited. Over to you, Cara.
Cool. Thanks, Alzon, for that awesome intro for everyone. We always get nervous, I think, and I'm sure Naythan and David can relate when we get asked for our bio. It's like, gosh, where do you start? What do you want from us? So I'm glad you did a great job at filtering it out and giving a little short piece of it. Yeah, so I think just to kind of kickstart this discussion, and this really is a discussion. So there's so much about students entering the job world that we constantly get asked about from students in terms of where do they begin, how do they know they're ready, and all of us, I mean, we also started out as students, we also started out trying to figure ourselves out, trying to figure out what our purpose is, what we would want to do, would we be good at it, and then there's the semi-trauma of having to apply for jobs and getting no's and getting yeses and needing to make decisions. And so we realize there's so much anxiety around it that maybe not everyone's talking about. And so that's what today is about. It's about, we got Naythan and David and myself in the room so that we can really just unpack with you guys what the process looks like and how you can, really introspect and look inward to better understand you, what your purpose is, what job makes sense for you, and really how to put yourself out there when it comes time to apply for that job. I mean, Naythan, David, and I were speaking yesterday, and we were saying we've noticed there's so many students who are so afraid of entering the job market after they've completed their degree that they end up just studying further. So they're like, you know what, I'll rather just do my master's. And they complete their master's, and they're like, no, I'm not ready yet. I'll rather just do my PhD. But then they become so overqualified with no work experience that it makes entering the job market that much more challenging. So this is an opportunity for us to chat to you about our expertise and our experiences and try to guide you as best we can, but also really please be popping your questions in the comment section. For us, that's going to be the most important part. We want to know about you. We want to know about your experiences and where do you need guidance, so that Naythan and David can offer all their insights to you and hopefully, encourage you along the way, because we all have to start somewhere. So yeah, I think let's just dive into it. So David, why don't you kickstart us, by saying, what is EQ anyways? Like emotional intelligence, how do you define that?
Thank you, Cara. And I'm also very excited to be having this discussion today with my two esteemed panelists. So I think the answer to what you asked me is rich and complex. It's not complicated, it's rich and complex. So in a nutshell, to make it simple, to break it down, EQ is really understanding and managing your own emotions, okay, and the other people and people around you. So there's two parts to it. So it's about you, my emotions, what are they? How do I understand them? And the people around me. It is, and a good example, and I think why it's so necessary is because I believe that EQ is a human superpower. It is a superpower that we have. In business, they speak a lot about soft skills, which is actually the incorrect term because they should really be called power skills. And those are really your human skills. It's how you engage with people. And as much as we have a technical expertise in something, there are, and I can't think of any jobs out there in the world that you're not going to engage with people somewhere at some stage, whether it is a co-worker, a colleague, a client, a customer, a team, a manager. You're going to have to connect with people. And that is where your superpower lies, because that is how you're going to be able to navigate the world of work far better if you can read people and you can read yourself. So if I had to break it down simply, there are 5 components, and there is beautiful stuff out there. If you go and Google EQ, you will come across some amazing content and amazing info and amazing clips and videos and infographics. I always go straight for infographics. To me, that's how because I learned through fun and I learned through play. And to me, an infographic just visually, it's so more enticing and helps me to understand things better. But if I had to break it down, there's 5 components of EQ. The first one is self-awareness. So we could spend days and days and days talking about this subject matter. But self-awareness is really, who am I? And in business, my experience has been so much focus has been placed on trying to understand other people and how to lead people, but not on the individual. So the very first place you need to always start is with me. But we don't tend to like that because it means we have to self-reflect. We have to go and look inside. We have to find out stuff that maybe we don't like. But that's the journey. The second part is to be effective in EQ, you need to have empathy. Good news is that it's a skill. You can learn empathy. Some of us arrive on this earth very empathetic, very kind, very gentle, very engaging. It's natural. For others of us, it's not natural, but in order to engage with the world, you need to be empathetic. So that's a key word, empathy. You have to also have social skills, and that's where that's where we talk about engaging with other people. So you have to learn how to engage or connect with other people. And it doesn't mean that we all come with our own personality style. Some of us are more open and out there and loud, and others of us are more reserved and quiet. It doesn't mean you have to be loud to connect with people. You have to find your way to connect with people. Okay. Self-regulation, that's the one I battle with the most. So self-regulation is the 4th component of EQ. It means you've got, even though we have emotions and we can use excuses all the time that other people upset us or put us in a bad mood, at the end of the day, we make that choice. So that's what self-regulation is. It means you have an emotion, but you've got to manage it. And then the last part is just motivation. And motivation is your drive, your enthusiasm, your ability to want to do something. So in a nutshell, I think it's very important to understand that EQ is a journey. We're all on it, and we'll carry on this EQ journey forever. It's not something you learn overnight. It's something you have to practice. And the best way we receive understanding of ourselves is also getting feedback from others. So the world will tell us stuff, people will tell us stuff, and we then must reflect on it and either accept it and go, maybe they've got something there about me, or maybe not. But it is, I think it's something that it's something that should be compulsory, that we all understand and learn what EQ is at the end of the day. I hope that all made sense. Otherwise, you can just Google an infographic and it's all there.
In short, Google the infographic. No, David, I think that was a really great kind of defined breakdown of EQ. And I mean, there's so much also out there on Google that it can become overwhelming, like which definition do I start with? So I think this was a really great way to break it down. And something you said, and I saw Naythan's head, really nodding in agreement, is that it's not a soft skill, it's a superpower. Soft skill always makes it feel like it's this add-on, it's this light and fluffy, it's maybe not that important, it's just to tick a box, but it's actually a superpower. Being able to understand yourself and understand others and pick up on those social cues to better manage the situation is important. And I mean, for students, we know with group assignments, you need that EQ to manage a group assignment because not everyone has the same work ethic or is going to pull the same weight. And how do you manage it so that, frustrations don't run high, for example? So I think another question we often get is, how is self-mastery different to EQ? So I think, David, when you were explaining EQ, you touched on, needing to self-manage and that kind of control. So how would you define self-mastery and kind of how it's different to EQ?
Are you asking me or Naythan?
David, I'll go to Naythan afterwards.
I said I wasn't going to have all the difficult questions, so
we never agreed to that.
I'm only joking. Yeah, so it's different and it's the same. And how we'll explain it is that self-mastery is unpacking that self-awareness component in greater detail. So it's owning what you have or what you present and not expecting that others are going to direct you or control the way you think or believe. And that's very important because if we don't have our own North Star that we follow, and if we don't know who we are, then people are going to impact you during your course of life and are going to derail you because you're not self-aware and you don't have your own self-mastery. When you know who you are, it's so much easier to deal with feedback and criticism because then you can own it and say, I accept it or I reject it. And that's really, if I had to simplify it into its core, that's the power of self-mastery. You know your strengths, you know your gaps, you know your development areas. People can't throw curveballs at you. Well, they can, but you'll far better manage a curveball because you're going to go, but that isn't who I am. And that's not what I'm like. That's not my intention. But if we don't know who you are, and then when you get a curveball thrown at you, it's going to derail you because you're going to go, oh, maybe they're right, maybe they're not, maybe I'm not good enough, maybe I can't achieve, maybe I'm not successful, maybe I failed. And that is why self-belief in what you can contribute and give to the world is so important. And if you know what you are, those are the areas you're going to shine. Because we can't shine in every aspect of life as much as we want to. Remember, we arrive on this earth with certain social styles or skills or personality. And when we're in the zone, we're going to shine. But when we're not in the zone, we're not going to shine. It sounds very
awesome.
But yes.
No, that makes sense. I was actually chatting to a friend about it a couple of days ago, and we were saying, with self-mastery, you learn how to put your mind in neutral so that things don't derail you. There'll be things that will happen that will be unexpected. Life happens. But to really have a hold on yourself where you put your mind in neutral, you give yourself a moment, you enjoy the power of pause, and you then decide, okay, how am I going to deal with this? What is the best way to go about it? So that makes complete sense. And Naythan.
Sorry, because the power, I'm glad you said the power of a pause, because we'll hopefully unpack it a bit later. But that is such a beautiful concept and term, and that's something we need to unpack further at some stage.
I agree. It changed my life learning about that, the power of a pause. So Naythan, I mean, you and I go way back. Naythan and I studied at the same university, same degree. We were very fortunate enough to work together. Well, I was fortunate. I didn't know how Naythan feels. But so, Naythan, I know a bit about your story in terms of your journey along self-mastery and how it's ongoing. But why don't you share with everyone, how do you define self-mastery and how has that showed up in your life?
Thank you so much, God. I think David just really encapsulated so beautifully, because it is that reaching inner congruence with yourself. It is what the world feeds you, number one, and how do I see that? Your interpretation, the power of pause, like you just said, Cara. So in that power of pause, it's like, how am I feeling? Checking in with the self. How am I feeling? Is this environment okay for me? Is there certain triggers within this environment? Where does that triggers come from? How did I arrive to these triggers? And what should my response now be? And then the last bit, the action, is then guiding, using those principles of first thing, realizing the context, knowing how it makes you feel in that moment, and then responding accordingly. And so some of you guys out there would say, goodness, Naythan, how long does that take? You said 10 minutes and just doing that. No, it's not. So when you really work on that EQ first quadrant of self-realization and really self-awareness, it becomes so much easier in life. And for me, that has become so much easier. Is firstly understanding what are your personal strengths, what is the things that you are so good at, and what are the things that you know that you can try as hard as you can, but you might not be as good as other people are. And so that is so okay. And then firstly, dealing with the fact that those are my strengths, and I don't like the word weaknesses. So I usually say my developmental areas. So those are the things I can work on to better myself at it. And I think when it comes to self-mastery, it is really getting to know that that is a journey, just like David said, it's a journey and not a destination. You don't ever want to say that I fully now know myself, because that means you're not evolving, not learning, not growing, and you're not heading towards something. And so if we are learning, growing constantly as beings, we will always be on this journey of self-mastery, self-awareness, and reaching our optimal emotional intelligence. So for me personally, I knew, and it's very weird, but I knew even in high school, and it's a very weird story, but people started talking to me all the time. Academically, I was quite good. And you get these voices that people come into your periphery, and they tell you about what are the things that makes money, So how do you make money in life? And you think, oh, if academically good, then you go for these following areas and things. And you don't ask the self, because the self is not confident enough to answer then. The self does not know what to dig into. The self is questioning life. The self is experimenting with life. And so we ignore the self. And then you go into and you read books, and you go on Google, and you ask your teachers, and you go or ask people, what should I study? And very rarely it comes back to say, but what do you like? What is the things that makes you happy, and how do you meet that with an occupation? And I think that for me was a moment where I sat when I did my application to university, is I sat and I had all of these options, and I said, but I have been finding myself in this situation. I live on res, that people are coming to speak to me. I was hit by the res back then, and I try to speak to people through their problems. I'm like, how does that manifest in a occupation? Oh, wow, study psychology, Dad, mom, not too happy about it, but that's okay. But that was my first moment of really trusting the self. And then when you get into your studies and you get into moments within your career of studying, you start seeing these alignments. And I call it the aha moments, but the alignments where you sit in a place within a moment and saying, this is really where I'm supposed to be. That brave move of trusting the self has led me to a moment where I feel in full congruence and inner alignment and balance with myself, that I need to be here right now. And that then manifests always within your workplace, if that is your choice, to trust the self. And I think with Cara, us working together, there's just those moments, that as stressful as this is, as complicated and challenging as it is, this is where I need to be, because I want to spend more time here. And it's sometimes unhealthy, but it's also okay. And you really reach. So when you start mastering yourself, you get to those moments so often. And I always tell to my students when I facilitate, is saying, I can be very depressed and lonely in December when I have to leave my job. But the moment I step in front of a classroom or on these virtual platforms and I start speaking to students and I can see the interaction, I can see the change, in that moment, I know I'm in alignment with where I need to be. And that is developing my purpose and passion in life. And that, for me, is also a very important part of self-mastery. It doesn't take a day or a few years or just 5 years. It takes a while. It's that journey of really realizing who you are, your purpose, and why am I here, and how can I reach or get to the point to actualize why I'm here.
Sure,
I don't know that
Naythan,
answers me.
you touch on so many key points. Seriously, I think that, number one, self-mastery is a lifelong journey. It's not going to happen in a couple hours. It's not going to happen in a couple days or weeks. It's really this lifelong journey. And I think something really important that you touched on is that there's such an importance to understand what you're good at, what you're passionate about, and where there's areas of growth. Because even just now tying it to the job market, and for those students and graduates that are tuned in right now and are thinking about the working world, you need to know what you've got, what is an asset to you, to know how to show up for that company you're applying for. You need to know what your strengths are, because you've got to pitch that to them. You've got to convince them why they need you. And you need to be honest and authentic about your growth areas. You can't be saying that you're great at something and not, because it almost implies dishonesty, which is not going to go down well. But if you say, you know what, I've identified, I have self-awareness that this is an area I need to develop in, but I'm ready to learn. I am ready to learn and I'm ready to develop with this company. All of a sudden, they see you differently. And they're like, you know what? We can mold this person. We can grow this person. We can invest here. So, and when they know that someone is on the journey to self-mastery and improving their emotional intelligence, they can see if this person is willing to invest in themselves, we will also be willing to invest in them. And so that is really important for all of you guys tuned in to understand why self-mastery and EQ is a superpower, and it takes hard work. It is not an easy thing. We all need to be intentional about it. And I think also, just kind of speaking, Naythan and David, to what you guys mentioned, I mean, a lot of us are also coming from the background where we are forced to enter the job market before we even feel ready. And we're still figuring out our purpose, and we're still figuring out what we do. So there's anxiety that builds. I mean, I came from a difficult background. We were financially struggling. And so I needed to work sooner than what I had anticipated. And thankfully, I knew what I was passionate about. So at least I knew, okay, I want to work in this field. And the rest, we kind of figured out, Naythan, you and I, we figured out together along the way. But, David, with you having so many years experience in recruitment and working with graduates, how do you see the need, or, kind of the having or lack thereof of self-mastery and EQ playing out with those students or with those young professionals and graduates? How do you see that really impacting them?
Yeah, I'm still in awe because you're both so wise. I'm making notes while you're speaking. That's I think, before I answer that question, I think that's the beauty of sessions like this, is as Naythan also referred to it. It's you're constantly learning, and in learning development, we talk about unlearning and relearning, because we can't be the same when we're 30 as opposed to when we're 20 to when we're 40. And I know that seems for a lot of you a long time away, but you can't be the same person, and you shouldn't be the same person, because you've grown, you've experienced life, there's pain, there's suffering, there's good and bad times, and through that you're on the journey of improving, I suppose, ultimately, where they talk about self-actualization. In other words, you're on your journey of finding your purpose and your path. And it should, as Naythan said, it should never end. So the day you die, you should still be on that journey. So going back to your question, Cara, I think it's highly evident, and I've seen it not only in grads or people who are coming in to be interviewed, but there are many people that I engaged with in my years of experience in the corporate world didn't grasp the concept of EQ. A lot of people feel uncomfortable uncomfortable with it. My generation, for example, definitely came out into the job world focusing on IQ. So it was about your technical skills and your ability and your intellect. And that's what got you where you needed to go. There wasn't the concept of what's my purpose, what drives me, what's my passion. You chose a career because it was going to make you money, or you were good at it. And I think it's important at this stage to highlight the difference between a strength and a passion, because, and this was a huge aha moment for me, because we can have strengths. Okay, it means that you're good at something. It doesn't mean it's something that you're passionate about. And that's a big differential. It's important to understand that, because you can also have a passion that you love to do, but you're not necessarily good at it, and own that too. So I may, for example, love to sing. I'm passionate about singing, but I'm not a very good singer, but that's still a passion. Okay. Whereas a strength is something that when I do it and apply myself, people notice it because I'm good at it. For example, if I'm good at finances, and that's always an example that I use, because there are lots of people that are good at finance. And often in business, people will turn to those people because they're good at numbers. It doesn't mean they're in their moment and they're shining. And that's what I love what Naythan said about alignment. They're actually not in alignment. And I've seen it in business. They've studied finance, for example. They've got an entire career in finance, but they're not passionate about it. It's not their purpose. They're just doing it because they're good at it. Full stop. So, I know I'm getting off the point, Cara, with your question. But I think it's important to acknowledge that and understand that. So, from a self-mastery perspective, if in business, as Cara said, if the employer is looking to, what is the reason why I must employ you? I have a position that's available. Are you going to fit that position for me? So I don't need to worry about that position anymore. Ultimately, that's what they're looking for. Someone's going to come in, do that job, okay, or partake in that role, and ideally grow in the organization. And there are a whole lot of things that come with that, because, I want you for your technical skills, but also it's what you bring. You bring your energy, your enthusiasm, your ability to connect with people, to engage with people. And often the mistake that businesses have made, and it's improving, but it's still there, is that they promote people because of their technical skills, not because of their human skills. Because you're good at a job, and I put you in charge of other people, yet I don't have any idea how to manage people. And that's just asking for, you're setting up somebody to fail because they got no support, or it may not necessarily be their skill set to manage other people. So when you're being interviewed, a good interviewer is thinking about all these things. They're going, has this person got the skill? That's probably the easiest one to tick off. Go tick, tick, tick. Yes, they met this. And then they're thinking, is there opportunity for this person to grow in the business? Will this person fit into our environment? And cultural fit is a very controversial term now. It used to be thrown out all the time. But it's whether, if this person comes into the space, will they make the space better at the end of the day? Will they make, and a true recruiter will say, will the person make the space their own? So I'm a firm believer that when you move into a role, and I know for most of you, it will be the first role that you're going into ever. And I did touch on it last week, that you have to make that position yours. Even if somebody else was in it before, you're not going to take over and do the same thing as that person did previously. You have to bring your color, your flair, your expertise, your uniqueness into that role. And that is what a good employer is going to be looking for. A bad employer is not. And that might also be your reason to pick up on that when you're being interviewed.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, David, you touched on some really important things in terms of, when someone has that emotional intelligence or lack thereof, it shows up in the interview room. I've had to interview many different people for, internship positions or for ambassador programs. And, the whole theme of this webinar series is, how do you set yourself apart? And in order to know how to set yourself apart, you need to know who you are and what makes you different to everyone else. And you need to own it, and you need to be proud of it, and you need to nurture that, and then bring that to that space that you're in, so that when someone's interviewing you, you're already able to say, you know what, this is what I bring. And as much as they're interviewing you, remember, you're also interviewing them. So if you are in tune with who you are and what kind of work environment you want to be a part of, you get to interview them as well to see, are you a good fit for that? Because no one wants to fail. You don't want to fail in that space. They don't want you to fail in that space. So you're allowed to ask questions to see, will I be really bringing value here? And you might decide, actually, I don't think I can bring value to this company. I'm rather going to go ahead and look for something else. And that happens. And that's okay. And it's also really, and this is something, Naythan and David, that I kind of want to take advantage while I have you guys, and maybe we can unpack this together, is Manindli mentioned a lot about growth mindset. And if students have it or not, that kind of determines their trajectory, their upward trajectory. But what was really unpacked that Manindli and I were having a conversation about was job application fatigue. We're finding so many of our youth are sick of the rejection. We know the numbers. I mean, 60% youth unemployment rate, that's a scary number. And so we don't want people taking themselves out of the game before they've even tried. But we also know for those that are applying and not getting feedback or getting no's, how do they tap deep into that growth mindset, that resilience? How do they evaluate themselves and evaluate their space to still stay encouraged to continue applying and maybe see what they need to change? Because maybe the way they're being interviewed is not showing the best version of themselves. So Naythan, let's start with you. How would you kind of encourage or recommend for our youth that are facing that fatigue right now?
I think it's so important in the aspect of rejection you just said, Cara, because we all feel rejection. Rejection is a very, very tough bullet to take and to swallow. And when you reach that space of, and you first see that first line, unfortunately, your whole stomach sinks. And I think self-mastery is the most beautiful tool to help us through that. It's firstly realizing it is my possible fit that is being rejected. So all those things David just spoke about, the fit of me is being rejected. The alignment with me, the skills to the workplace is being rejected. My experience is being rejected. My years of my qualification is being rejected. I am not being rejected. And so when you have the emotional intelligence to realize that Naythan is not being rejected, it is parts and bits of Naythan that is not being fit to that specific position, then you start realizing, and then you start getting into that growth mindset of doing this every time. You start having a bit more, the agility is there. You become relentless in applications. But I also would like to, and I'm going to be very realistic here, I want to say this for me, I in my life haven't done a lot of job applications because I actually filtered through and did job applications for applications. And so, yes, you do get that to that stage in life where you are so desperate and you just click apply. But guess what? That does reflect outwards at the end of the day. That does reflect and it comes back to you at the end of the day. Sit down and really, and I know you said, David spoke about it last week, be curious about the organization. Be curious about the team that you're going to be on. Be curious about the actual role at the moment and where it is situated. See yourself, visualize yourself in that chair. See yourself doing the work. Look at the projects they are doing. And if there's no fit, don't hit the apply button. Only when there is the fit and you see the right, then that happens. Just a story of somebody I know personally, and I've had this talk and a coaching session with a person, is that this person actually was really desperately looking for a job, and then got a call, said, we saw your profile, you best fit, you get a company car, everything. And the person calls and I said, oh, wonderful. It's been 3 months of you just looking for a job. And I said, how do you feel about this place? He said, you know what, at this moment, I must just take it. And I said, we really digressing of what we spoke about of you realizing yourself, what your worth is, number one, how you align, what you are, your strengths, your developmental areas to your workplace. And do you see that actually manifesting within this workplace? And the person says, it's gonna be a robotic task, but I'll get it. I need the salary. Mind you, then a week later, the person gets the call. The day before the person actually is supposed to do the final approval and contract, and gets a call for a very small organization. The person is going to live out their true, the strengths and their purpose and their passion within that workplace. Salary a little bit less. Now, this is the predicament we are sitting within the 21st century. The salary thing is when you are presented that big, beautiful salary, and then you have another offer at hand, and it's, but I probably won't be able to buy the GTI that I want to buy, my first year of work. But we're happy. Now, guess what? And I don't want to say learn from me, but I want to say with my story, it took me years to get there. But guess what? When people see you being yourself authentically, you're passionate about the things you do, you show up to work, not just by showing up physically, but you show up to work by really being present in your projects and the daily activities you take on, you will catapult to a direction and to places and spaces you've never even imagined just because you are you. Guess what? You can get paid because you are just you. And that happens when you align yourself into a job that really speaks to you after mastering yourself and actually reaching the point of self-actualization within yourself. Be aware of the moments you're going to get on the journey of imposter syndrome, and we can talk about that again. The imposter syndrome, the comparison syndrome, the phenomena, and the big bucks phenomena. Yes, you want to get the big bucks. Yes, these days you're going to compare, and yes, there's going to be days where you're going to sit around a table and think you're not supposed to be here. And so that also sometimes contributes and messes you up completely. But I believe in if you believe in yourself. And I'm just jumbled. I don't know what I just said, but I think I answered.
Fire, Naythan. You said fire. That is what happened. My goodness. And I think so many of us can relate to that. I mean, it was a big reality check for me. I mean, I came out with my honors degree and my HPCSA registration thinking I'm the hottest thing ever. And then, wow, needing to apply for that job. And it was only through networking and people believing in me that I got my first job. But my salary looked nothing like what I thought I was going to be earning. You immediately want to jump into the 15s and the 20K a month. Yeah, no, bring it down. Way down. But the reality is that if you start off, like Naythan said, with something you are passionate about, that you really believe in, you can grow from there and you'll enjoy the journey rather than doing something. A mentor of mine told me something that really changed me was, don't sell your soul for benefits. Sometimes taking the paycheck is not worth it. The quality of your life gets compromised if you're going to sell your soul for benefits. And that really changed things. And so, David, I think, same question when it comes to that fatigue and combating it and how to really enter the job market with confidence. What would you advise?
Yeah, it's and I want everybody who's joined us to understand that we're talking from experience and hindsight, because I'm sure we've all admit, because that's exactly what I did. So, and the only reason we can share this with you is because we've learnt and we've been to the pain and the suffering on the way. So, I mean, I applied for everything. So when I finished studying, and a shout out to all my DUTs out there, my Durbanites from DUT. So I studied HR. So I applied for anything that was in the slightest way linked, and sometimes it wasn't linked because it was like, I've got to get a job now. And then you lose touch. And if I think back now, you lose touch with what you really want because you just apply. And at that stage, the rejections that came back were never ending for me. I just had the standard, your standard CV, just send to as many people as you, and then it all came. Well, in most cases, you never get a response. But that, unfortunately, yeah, that's first sentence and your stomach. Oh. However, it is a reality. But you both said such wise words again about, and I know it's hard to grasp it and to make it feel real, but you have to. If you don't follow that purpose, there's once again that alignment is not going to happen. And yes, somebody, and that comparison syndrome and the imposter syndrome that Naythan mentioned they're rough, it's real, because we see somebody else who studied with you and they maybe got headhunted before they finished studying, or they got approached, or the first job they applied for, they got it, and off they are driving a GTI, and you're going, hi, hey, what happened here? This is not fair. So don't go down that road. It's a pointless exercise. So going back to the fatigue component is that, and I know you don't want to hear this because I never wanted to hear it, but it's through the rejection, it's through the pain, it's through the struggle, it's through the suffering that you're actually going to blossom and find your way. And there is no one escapes it. Some people just hide it better than others. But it's on that journey of feeling something that doesn't work out for me that's actually going to give you the resilience to cope with the future. Because if you've had no hardships, if you've had no tough times, you're not going to cope later on in life. So let's rather get it done and dusted now when we are starting off on our journey and not be protected from it. Because trust me, that is what's going to give you the ability to cope with whatever's thrown at you later on in life. And it's part of your story. It's part of what makes you you, and you'll be able to use that, and you'll be able to compare and potentially assist yourself and assist others later on in life when you become a fancy mentor in your business, because they're going to say, this person's amazing from the journey that they've used. But that's, I think, just from my, and as I said the other day, this is just all of us, we're talking from our experience, our journey. We can't, so when giving advice, it's yes, we can have experience around what we've studied, and especially if you study psychology, it's to support people and to help them find their own way. But my story is my story, but I think there's elements of it in everybody's life, and we sometimes think we're the only one going through. But trust me, we talk once again about the rejections from employers, the majority of you are receiving rejection letters. It's a tiny percentage that just for some reason had an opportunity, but that's just here and now.
Absolutely. I think, it's that feel the fear, but do it anyways. The rejection could come, but that's okay. And like Naythan also said, we need to also discern. Your job applications need to go through an application process. Just because it's there doesn't mean you need to apply. What aligns with your culture, that your work culture that you envision, with your purpose, with your value system. And that's where the emotional intelligence and the self-mastery comes in. It helps you filter that out. And to just keep going, because all of the interviews, it adds to your experience. You're going to do it better next time. And so see it as you keep refining your skills as you go along. So I really want to give us enough time to dive into the Q&A with our students that are online. So I know that David has given us some great links on resources, free resources. There's some articles, there's some online free personality assessments that you guys can do if you want to better understand yourself and where your strengths and growth areas lie. Okay, I think David popped off quick. He's probably going to pop back on soon. So Naythan, I think while we've got you, you work on campus. I know that student support does, CSSS does so much. And so maybe if you can just share with us, not just from a UWC perspective, but also, you've worked at CPUT as well, with the university environment. If students are looking to access resources to further develop themselves from the university resource perspective, where can our students be going?
Thank you, Cara. I think it's so important to know your university. And it's COVID sucks. So it really put us in a position where students didn't get the look and feel of the institutions. And so they couldn't get into which office is which office. So if you get the opportunity and the chance, get to know your institution very well. From UWC's perspective, people apply to our courses, and we actually offer those what David calls the power skills. We offer core skills training in a program called the Emerging Leaders Program. And when we interview people for the program, they're like, I didn't know about this, but when I saw it, and how often do you say, I didn't know about this, And so what is stopping you from not knowing about something? It is you, darling. It really is you. So put yourself in the position to know better and to know what's on campus. We have academic support, and the academic support office at the moment is not helping you study with your academics, but it's setting you up to be the best version of to optimally study and to reach your goals and your graduate goals at the end of the day. So they talk about time management, motivation, all of those skills that you need. There are courses and programs, not necessarily ones that are long-term, but ad hoc ones as well, using the counseling services for referrals on campus. So you might go to that counseling unit and you don't have anxiety or depression, or you got any psychological ailment, but you have a need, and then you get referred to those specific offices, like our office that helps you with coaching and mentoring through your academic life and through your personal development journey as well. There's so many opportunities within residents that they do this as well, using the resources, and I think it really comes with the stigma of the help-seeking behavior. We don't want to ask for help. And so if we don't ask for help, that means we'll never get help. And so you'll never know what services are available if you don't go and ask. Be that relentless student that actually goes and knock on people's doors and asks, like, I was wondering if you can, and I was wondering if you have this. And guess what? Sometimes that opens up, because I remember in my second year, that's the student I was. I knocked on the door, myself and my best year Roxanne, walked down the corridor in the education faculty, and we knocked on the door of this peer education program. And guess what? That changed my life forever. I became a peer educator in that program. I then when I was looking for a job, they then took me on mainly because of how passionate I was about the field that I was a peer educator and volunteering in as a student. So there are opportunities. Stop saying that your institution is not offering you opportunities. Go knock on the doors, know how to ask, and be relentless in your journey of asking for help and developing yourself.
Sure, absolutely. That's so true. If you don't ask for help, you won't get the help. And it is our responsibility to go and seek it. And, like Naythan said, we all have our personal story. I mean, when I graduated, I went to all my lecturers and all the contacts I had, and I said, I'm looking for a job. If you hear of anything, please tell me. I need a job. And it worked. The UWC HIV and AIDS program contacted me. They remembered me also as a student. I was also involved with the peer education program through my courses, and that's where I started. My mentor was there. I met Naythan there, and it really just changed my life and how I developed as a young professional. So definitely, guys, be networking, be asking. And while we're speaking about the word ask, our lovely Alzan has joined back to take the Q&A section further. So I hope you guys have been posting lots of questions for Naythan and David. And I know Alzan, two things that we also wanted to unpack was the power of the pause and imposter syndrome. So just to add that in, that it would be great if David and Naythan could also elaborate a bit more on that for our students.
I think that would be great. We can elaborate on that a bit, and then when students start posting questions, then we can answer those questions after that. So Naythan or David, the floor is yours. So if you could just maybe speak more a bit about, imposter syndrome to start off with, and while we're waiting for students to pop their questions in the comment section.
I don't know if David wants to go first.
I think we were going to go first.
Okay.
No,
this is a concept I've learned about a few years ago, and then weirdly, my mentor has put me in this position. goodness, so many times. And I would find myself, and especially working at a higher education institution as a young professional, I found myself in a room of professors and academics, and you suddenly become so silent. You realize that the room and the people in the room is dimming your light. And in that moment, that is when imposter syndrome is really, it's actually manifesting in your life. So the imposter syndrome is when you question yourself of why you are there. Is when you question yourself, your abilities and your voice and your ability to bring change within the room by comparing yourself to the rest of the room. And so that is such a dangerous thing when you start in a work, when you start in the professional world, and you start in anywhere in a company. And so I found myself in those positions, and then I started learning how I can get myself out of that mind space. Number one, knowing who you are, and you can only be yourself within a room. Using your voice and your experience to guide your questions and your comments, not being afraid of what you do. And so when you use your experience, your life story, only what you know, to guide those professors in those rooms going, we never thought of it. And then you're like, oh, wow, did they just say, for this one? This young person in the room. And then because what we try to do in imposter syndrome, sometimes we try to speak their language. We try to speak their language. We try to impersonate them, and we try to get ourselves to their level, then to be them. And you cannot be, They then start respecting you because of who you are. Are you powerful? And for me, I always believe in bringing your light to that room. And it's when you bring your light to that room, you give people permission for their lights to shine with yours, but I'm not dimming mine for yours to shine. And so the imposter syndrome really, really happens with young professionals. I know it happens with us, and it happened with me for a few years. For my mentor to get me out and say, Naythan, I chose you for a reason. I chose you to be in that room for a reason, to represent me for a reason. And I just need you to now start realizing what that reason is and why you are in that room.
Thank you so much for that, Naythan. You are just absolutely fire today. I don't even want us to end the session because you are just so amazing. I feel like Naythan and Cara and I, we all were at UWC. So hi to the UWC alumni. So I feel like when I was a peer educator and Naythan was just giving us guidance or facilitating a session, it's just been amazing to learn from you again, Naythan. And then David, also, you've been really amazing. I think our students really enjoyed seeing you last week as well as this week. But is there maybe anything okay, so we have a question. So it's from Nabila. How do you balance finding a job that you are passionate about and earning a living wage? Which is a really good question. And you guys touched on it. So I think this one, David, we can give you a chance to answer first.
No, that's a hard one. No, but it's a very, very valid question. But if you take into account that everything that we've spoken about today, we all have to earn a living because we need money, and I understand that completely. However, what can happen is that if you go down the wrong road, you can lose that light that Naythan also talks about. You can lose track of it. You're following a North Star, what you bring to the world. You can actually get lost. And I've seen it. I've seen it in the corporate world. People are really lost in the system because they didn't follow their passion and doing what they want to do. It impacts you as a human being. It doesn't just impact one component of you. Every essence of who you are, we're supposed to, there's amazing research on it, is that we don't have this drive, this purpose of where we want to go. And don't be anxious if you're sitting thinking, I don't know what my purpose is, because that's another lovely story, because purposes change along the way as well. You don't have to have the same purpose. As you grow and experience life, you might find a different purpose. It's not one thing that you stick to for the rest of your life. But it's important to understand currently now what's important to you, what is your purpose, what's next. So, yes, it's very easy just to get a job for the sake of earning money. And sometimes that's unfortunately what might happen in desperation, as Naythan mentioned too, because we do need to earn a living. But maybe you can, let me go back to growth mindset. Maybe it's your mindset to understand, I'm going to this role, but in this role, I may be able to develop or redirect the role, or to stepping stone to something else, and accepting that it is what it is now. It's not what my dream job is or my dream salary, because as you were thinking those big bucks of the GTR, actually, I'm still going to have to travel public transport, or I might be able to afford a scooter. But you've got to get in there to start making a difference and making a change and finding your true passion and what you're trying to achieve. So I know I'm not giving the answer that you want to hear, because it's a little more complicated than a yes or no, because it is. Sorry about that.
Yeah. I think also to add on what David said, Alzon, I know we're tight on time, but for those listening, trust in your purpose. It's so important. Trust in your purpose and where it's going to take you. When I first applied after I graduated, based on my qualification and my experience and my marks, I thought I'd be earning a very different salary to what my first offer was. And I could decide to work at the HIV and AIDS program for a salary that I thought wasn't what I should be getting, or another job in sales. I mean, I had no interest in sales, which I would have earned a lot more on commission. And I had to choose between my purpose and the money. And I chose my purpose. And because I was so passionate about what I was doing, I pushed myself further than I thought I ever could, because I wanted to invest. I didn't show up to work and gave the bare minimum because I didn't actually love what I did. I loved what I did. And within a span of a couple years, I was promoted 3 times based on my passion, based on the work that I put in without even realizing it, because I loved what I did. So trust your purpose and where it can lead you. And like David said, there might be jobs you'll need to take because there's family you need to provide for, but also then continue to be on the lookout and know that there might come time for a sacrifice in the beginning to get you started up in your career. And your career can change. It can evolve. There are people that became lawyers and ended up becoming personal trainers because their passion changed. Their focus shifted. We know lots of those. They're all over Instagram. So, really give yourself that fluidity as well, in terms of your purpose and passions can be multiple and they can change. Thanks.
Thank you so much for that, Cara. And on that note, I think we will be ending our session today. But thank you so much to Naythan, David, as well as Cara, for the amazing session that we had with our students today. I think it was very insightful. And, even I was feeling completely motivated by just your expertise in the area of EQ as well as self-mastery. So guys, this is our last webinar for 2021. So we will be back next year and we'll bring a lot more speakers back. I think Naythan and David is definitely some of the speakers we'll be bringing back next year for our sessions that we will be having on Facebook or on Zoom next year. We never know what will happen. But thank you so much, everyone, for joining today. Please remember to complete our survey. We had lots of students from all over. We had some students from University of Witwatersrand, some students from University of Val University, as well as students from UWC, like the University of the Western Cape, where we from. So we are here with you guys. So Wiseman asked the last one. Yes, unfortunately, Wiseman, this is our last webinar for 2021. But this it won't be the last one, that you will be able to rewatch what we've done in the past and still implement, everything that we discussed during those webinars, to have a look back and write some pointers down, because we had some expertise within our webinar series that we did last month with Catherine from Beckerbury. We had another speaker, that is a businesswoman that's well established. Go have a look at those webinars again, and even this one, rewatch it, because you never know what notes and the real expertise that you'll be able to gain from this. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining today. It was really a pleasure. If you have any more questions, please feel free to let us know and send us any questions you might have to support@feenix.org. So the resources that we posted, that also shared in the comment section. So the resources we were referring to earlier. So please feel free to just read it in the comment section, and then we'll also post it quickly on screen for you guys. But those resources are in the comment section. There, thumbs up. Okay, let me just hide that comment, please, Nabila. There you go. There's the resources that David was referring to, and then we also added some. And like Naythan said, also feel free to get in touch with your university's development office, so you can know which office resources your university is offering you. And remember, guys, those resources are for free. Even on the websites that we posted on the reference material, it's free for anyone to access. Even the Knowledge Trust resources that we spoke about last and earlier during the session, it's free for anyone to access. So please go through those resources so you can focus on, not just finding your passion and, knowing what your strengths are and knowing what your development areas are, but so that you can ultimately refine yourself and know who you are and know what you can offer to a company, but also know that what you are supposed to receive back from that company is really amazing, because you need to be in an environment, that is going to continue to push and grow you so that you can ultimately become the best version of yourself. But thank you so much, everyone, for joining. It was lovely having you all here. And we will see you guys next year. So bye, everyone.
Bye. Thanks, guys.